So you're thinking about making a move to Portland, Oregon, but maybe you're trying to figure out what are the intricacies or things I should know about the east side of town, maybe even versus the west side of town. Well, in today's video, we're going to go over the East Side map tour highlights. So we're going to take you from the top of the East Side map where Portland Airport is all the way down to the last city of the East Side, kind of share with you some neighborhood insights and how to kind of disseminate, the different locations in the East Side. So stick around for that. And if you're new to our channel, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you can get up-to-date videos that we put out every single week about life in Portland. That's what we're here for, and we're getting after it right now. So we're getting right into it. Today, we're going to go over the East Side map tour of Portland, Oregon. If you haven't seen our West Side tour on map tour, go check out our video on that. We did one. It's important to note that, both sides of the river are very different and offer different things, and it's a lot to cover. So in today's video, we're going to cover over the East Side map tour. And again, I'm going to start with the fact that we have this imaginary line, circle, if you will, that goes around the perimeter of all the Portland metropolitan cities. Obviously, it's an invisible line. You can Google and see what the urban growth boundary looks like, but it's important to note this because outside of the urban growth boundary, we don't have a lot of building happening. It's mostly just farm and agricultural land, acreage properties, and we don't do urban sprawl. Years and years ago, the city of Portland decided that that's how we're going to manage growth instead of just running out to the farmlands and expanding the city without adding appropriate amenities and utilities and all that stuff, or just urban sprawl like a lot of cities in the country do. So keep that in mind. We're going to start here right at the top, right here at the Portland International Airport, because that is literally right off the Columbia River, which is the river that divides Vancouver, Washington from Portland, Oregon. And as you can see, it's also on the east side of town. And so it's important to kind of start there. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so you can see it a little closer. It's really kind of neat, actually. The Portland, when you fly in, you kind of fly over some water in most cases. I have some family that lives up over the river in Vancouver, right there on the river, and they get to kind of watch the planes coming and going, which is kind of pretty. And you get really a direct view down the Columbia River of Mount Hood. It's really something. So this is on the east side of town. Obviously, if you're commuting or you're traveling a lot, you kind of want to know where that airport is in comparison. So a lot of people choose to live on the east side because it is a closer commute to the airport. So if you're somebody who travels a lot for work, or maybe you live out of town sometimes of the year, or you just need to be close to the airport for whatever reason, you probably want to consider living, on the east side, or just being aware of what your commute looks like from the west side. On a normal day, no traffic, it's not that difficult to get to the airport in a lot of areas of Portland in the 30-minute time frame, but you always have to factor in traffic and unknowns, so it can be a lot more than that. All right, let's get into it. So this is the east side of town, and what divides the east side from the west side? The good old Willamette River. Yes, we said Willamette. It's funny, I had somebody yesterday say it's pronounced Willamette, not Willamette. Well, maybe it was at one point, but this is how we say it here in Portland, is Willamette. So if we kind of scroll in here to the top, just kind of going south of the airport, I'm going to talk about North Portland first, because it's obviously at the top of the east side. And some markers here to be aware of is that North Portland is a pretty interesting little segment on the map, because it's not just a little compact city. It kind of sprawls out, east of I-5. So if you're on I-5, you can kind of see that there is the North Portland on both sides of I-5, but mostly on the west side of I-5. And it's really the last area that you see when you're leaving Portland to go up to, say, Vancouver. And it goes further deeper to an area called St. John's. And one of the main colleges out there actually is University of Portland. It's a beautiful campus. It's a great college. It sits right there. You can see near the Willamette River. If you ever kind of go to that area and kind of drive along, let's see if we can get a little bit closer. If you kind of drive along Willamette Boulevard, it's really a beautiful drive, not just because you have a little bit of the view of the city and the water. There is an industrial area down here. here. I don't know how pretty that is, but it is kind of a unique vantage point when you're there. But the houses along Willamette Drive are just gorgeous. They're over 100 years old. It just looks like you kind of go back in time when you're driving in there. And a lot of people like living in this area just because of the style and nature of the houses. It's close to U of P. That's always a plus. If you go a little deeper into North Portland, you're going to run into the St. John's area. And what's unique about St. John's is that St. John's Bridge can actually bring you over to the west side of town pretty darn easily. It's a really neat looking bridge if you haven't seen it before, and it can get you over the other side and into downtown Portland kind of quick. So sometimes an alternative to being on the east side but wanting to get to downtown Portland kind of quickly is taking a look at opportunities in the North Portland area near St. John's, because it is a pretty quick jaunt across that bridge to Highway 30, which actually butts up against like Northwest Portland, Forest Park, all that. It's actually a gorgeous drive on Highway 30. I love it. So this is a great option. And also in St. John's, they do have some neat restaurants and amenities down there. So kind of a unique area. It does feel a little bit further out in the sense that it's like the tip of North Portland or the top of Portland before you kind of have to consider being over in Washington. But it's just a really neat area with some older properties, a lot of first century homes. But yeah, that is North Portland. So kind of getting back over here to I-5, which is really the freeway that runs north and south through Portland, takes you all the way up to Canada and all the way down through California. You jump on I-5 and you can kind of see over here on the right, even though it's a little bit of North Portland right to the east of I-5, then it quickly jumps into northeast. I don't know if you can see it here on the map. It says McMiniman's Kennedy School. Love that place. If you're not familiar with Portland's McMiniman's restaurants, they're notorious for having multiple locations throughout Oregon, really. And they are super unique. They take buildings, like in this case, they took the old Kennedy School back from the early 20s and 30s and completely renovated it into, inside the school is a restaurant. There's multiple pubs. It's actually a hotel. You can stay there. I spent a lot of time there in my 20s. It was just a great place to go meet up with friends. They have an outdoor eating area. They have little rooms. They have a theater inside. So we'd go pay a few bucks and sit and watch a movie. Then we jump down to the pub. It's just the quintessential Portland experience to go to a McMiniman's restaurant. And that was one of my favorites of all time back when I was in my 20s. I just love that place. I actually was there a few years ago. It hasn't changed much. It's really just got this cool vibe. Whenever I'm in that area, I sometimes stop in and maybe grab a sandwich or some food, but just really a neat place. Actually, I think I had my 25th birthday there. I stayed overnight with a friend of mine and we just had a blast. They even have a little pool. It's a cool place. You got to check it out. So now we're into Northeast Portland. So Northeast Portland, as you can kind of tell from the map, is 84 runs west of Northeast Portland and I-5 runs north and south. And so this kind of quadrant, let's talk about it. There's some neighborhoods that are rather interesting in here. First one I want to talk about is Irvington. It's this great little section kind of where it says Irving Park and it kind of butts up against Grant Park. There is this really beautiful neighborhood called Irvington that when you drive through it, you literally feel like you're kind of back in time in the 1930s, 40s. And the houses there are just gorgeous. I will say this, though, it's not a particularly walkable neighborhood. A lot of people want to look at Irvington because it's the beauty of that older kind of home, but there's just not a ton of place. You can walk to the grocery store. You can walk to Grant Park or Irving Park. It's very flat. It's very walkable. A lot of people do walk in that neighborhood, but if you're really looking for that neighborhood in Portland where you're walking everywhere, I wouldn't say this is the one. Yes, you can get to some, like there's a bakery, like one of my favorite croissant bakeries actually is just not too far away. So you could walk to that in theory, but I wouldn't particularly say that this is a high walkable area in terms of, just your normal neighborhoods in Portland. But the houses are amazing. It's really tough to get houses in there, in affordable price points, to be honest. And keep in mind, there's no growth happening in these neighborhoods that I'm pointing out to some degree because they just built the neighborhoods back in the 30s, 40s, and There really is no other houses there unless they have a tear down house that they redo, but really a neat neighborhood. And it kind of butts up against Grant Park. So you get off the freeway here on 84 on Northeast 33rd and you go towards Grant Park. Grant Park is really big. It's walkable. It's a great park to explore and have in the neighborhood if you're going to live in the Grant Park area. It really backs up to Grant High School. It's really kind of the centerpiece in Grant Park. And again, Grant Park has a lot of really beautiful homes as well, a lot of great options. People love living in the Grant Park kind of Irvington area. Now, if you go north up here to Fremont Street, now Fremont Street is what we call a main artery road. I use that to say that it has a lot of restaurants, bakeries, coffee shops, services. That is walkable. So if you go north up here, you're going to butt up to Alameda. If you haven't heard of Alameda, it's another very popular Northeast Portland neighborhood, and it kind of has a rise to it. So if you kind of scroll up here, there is an Alameda Ridge, and those homes are usually well over $1 million. They sometimes have views. They're big, stately, older homes that really are just gorgeous. But Fremont Street here is the main street in that area where you get on it, it's busy, and it takes you into like the Beaumont-Wilshire area. And this is one of my favorite areas in Northeast Portland because there's just a lot of great areas to eat and explore. Had my first Pips Donuts off Fremont Street. If you don't know Pips Donuts, they actually just opened one on the Westside, which is pretty exciting. That tends to happen with a lot of really great locally owned, nostalgic type eateries. They get so popular, they start placing them all over Portland. But this is just a very popular road here in Northeast Portland that kind of takes you from like Alameda to Beaumont, and you can get to kind of different areas quickly. Kind of runs into Sandy Boulevard. But Beaumont-Wilshire is also a really charming area. The streets are a little smaller in that area, but the affordability is still pretty good there, and you can get a really charming older home. As you enter into Alameda, you're going to find price points start to rise. So kind of Alameda, Irvington are maybe the more expensive areas, if you will, in those areas. Grant Park, sometimes you can get something affordable there. And when I say affordable, obviously at the time of this video, affordability is like our average sales price in Portland is at just under $600,000. So I did show properties in Grant Park in the 700s not that long ago, but usually you're looking at for a nice quality property in the 800s, 900s, and they can certainly go up over $1 million if they've been redone or their location in the neighborhood's a certain way. But moving on, not to get too in depth on these cities because I'm trying to do a high level overview. If you go east here in Northeast, you're going to run into Rose City. And Rose City is affordable, but it's also got a lot of charm to it. And it's a big spread out area, and it kind of butts up against 84. So, and it, of course, Sandy Boulevard, which is also a main artery road, runs through that and goes all the way to 205. But yeah, this is kind of the Rose City area. There's an old golf course here called Rose City Golf Course. I actually just stopped in there a few months back because my son golfs and he had a tournament there, and literally they haven't done hardly any remodeling since the day it opened. It literally feels like you go, even the bathrooms at Rose City Golf Course were like the original tile and everything. So not a lot has been touched at that, but I guess in a way that's kind of cool because you get to see it for kind of probably what it was back in the day. Okay, so we've covered Northeast Portland, which again is just north of 84. Now let's go south of 84. Now, we're still in Northeast Portland when we go south of 84. And right away, the neighborhood that is a very popular neighborhood is Laurelhurst. And that is right in this area. In fact, I just sold a house in Laurelhurst, Dynamite Home. We did a video on Laurelhurst as well if you want a video tour of that neighborhood. But see kind of how you have Laurelhurst Park here. It almost looks, when you get a little close to Laurelhurst, like there's a pattern to it. And that is because it was designed by a gentleman who also put together Ladd's Addition. And so there's a little bit of character to the way it was designed. You kind of feel like the streets are a certain way, but Laurelhurst Park is this wonderful park, walkable. They've got basketball courts, play areas. They have a beautiful kind of man-made lake. It used to be an old spring in there. Really worth going and checking out if you're considering the Laurelhurst area. It is a fairly flat neighborhood with some rises to it, but I wouldn't say if you're an avid walker, not a big deal to kind of come down towards some areas where you can maybe go grocery shopping or grab some food, especially depending on where you're at in the neighborhood. But it's really beautiful neighborhood to drive through. Again, houses built in the 30s and 40s, and earlier than that, really. And it butts up against Providence Medical Center. So if you're going down Highway 84, the freeway, excuse me, you're going to see Providence Medical Center right there. So we do have a lot of demand for people who are in the medical field to live close by, because usually the rule of thumb for most doctors or medical professionals is to be within 20 minutes of the hospital that they work at. So this is a great option here in this area. And of course, everybody loves Laurelhurst. And then North Tabor, Mount Tabor, if you will, is kind of in the next east of Laurelhurst area. And it does, similar to its name, it has a rise. It's not a mountain per se, but it's called Mount Tabor. And it definitely has kind of an elevation change as you get into it. Mount Tabor Park is, of course, another desirable park in the area. And you have a lot of different food options throughout the East Side. So we've talked about this in other videos, that the East Side is known for its food. Not that the West Side doesn't have it, but East Side of town is where, when you're in particular areas of the East Side, a lot of people know, oh, I'm going to go to Bamboo Sushi, or I'm going to go over to Pip's Donuts, or I'm going to go do this. I certainly do that. If I'm crossing over the river and meeting up with clients, I oftentimes will stop at the different restaurants that are in those particular areas, because they're just known for it. As you go a little bit to the west of Mount Tabor, you're going to run into Hawthorne. And Hawthorne is very walkable. A lot of the houses there are kind of that 4-square type property that really people like, but not a lot of them will have like garages. It's a different vibe. And Hawthorne is known for its walkability. It's got a lot of food, shops, things of that nature. And we kind of look at it a little bit like it's a bohemian style area, because it definitely has that vibe. It's hard to explain unless you get over there and kind of walk around and kind of tell, but definitely has its own vibe in the Hawthorne area, but very walkable, probably one of the more walkable areas in the Portland East Side of town. You can kind of gauge just by looking at some of the restaurants and so forth that kind of start to pop up when I get a little closer in here. You've got obviously New Seasons, which is a great marketplace that we all love to go to for groceries. Oh, Porque No. Oh my goodness. One of the best taco places on the East Side. Like if you're going to hit tacos, go to Porque No. They also have one of my favorite bakeries over here, which is Grand Central. Oh, look, another McMinimans. Told you, McMinimans is everywhere, and they just have a really cool vibe to them that is very Portland-esque. But yeah, just a lot of eateries, if you will, a lot of great places to go and eat in that Hawthorne kind of zone. All right, so I'm scrolling out a little bit because we're going now south, and this is Ladd's Addition. So Ladd's Addition is fascinating in my mind because if you look at it, you can just tell it's got this, what looks to be like a very well laid out neighborhood. And it is its own neighborhood in that it was designed to be very similar to some of the southern towns on the East Coast, just the way it's laid out. And literally you can walk it so that you can go around this little square here. You can walk down the streets. The homes are ever so charming. It kind of reminds me when I went to go visit Savannah, Georgia, just how they lay out some of the neighborhoods and so forth from way back in the day. Just a really neat place to go check out. And then of course, down here off Division, there is some more great places to eat and explore in that regard. And now we're going to go, now, by the way, just for clarification, Southeast Portland, when does that transition? Let's go back up here for a minute. So Laurelhurst, which is that kind of that, it's Northeast Portland, but on the very bottom of Laurelhurst, it turns into Southeast. So if you look for properties in Laurelhurst area, it could either be Northeast Portland or Southeast, depending on where the location is. But by the time you hit Burnside, you're starting to see Southeast Portland addresses. So it kind of, it was a little confusing in that regard, but everything we're kind of looking at is been in the Southeast area. So kind of going back to kind of the Ladd's Addition area, I'm going to scroll out here for a minute so we can kind of take a look at where we're at right now. So then we've got Highway 26, which again, you go kind of south of that. You're still in Southeast Portland. You've kind of got the little Brooklyn area. You start to approach the Reeds area. So Reeds College is another very well-known liberal arts college in our area. They actually have the naked bike ride that goes through there. You've got Woodstock to the west. And then we come across another really popular Southeast Portland city that everybody just really loves. And that is that we're approaching the Sherwood Moreland area. And we've also done a video on this, so if you haven't checked it out, please do so. Sherwood is what we call a cult following. People absolutely love Sherwood. We get a lot of people move out of state who want to have that, Portland experience. They kind of want to be closer in. And if they've done any homework on it, they usually have already decided that's where they want to live. It happens a lot. And it's almost like its own little town inside of Portland. So I love Sherwood. If I were to live on the east side, that's probably an area I would highly consider. It is, you can kind of tell it's right up against the river. And it's really close into downtown as well as the west side. So we have a lot of people who are like, hey, I want to be close to the west side. I want to be close to OHSU. I want to get to downtown fast. This is the area that really suits them, or that they try to look in, as the Sherwood Moreland area. There's Oaks Park right along the river, which is a early 19th century amusement park that is still in full effect. They still do events there. It's a true amusement park. There's the Sherwood Bridge, and that's been redone in the last several years. It's really a bridge that kind of takes you from the east side to the west side pretty quickly. And there's just all these little neighborhoods within Sherwood that you can be really close to walkability. So Grand Central Bakery, that's one of my favorite bakeries in all of Portland. They have them kind of peppered out throughout Portland. There's a lot of restaurants, coffee places. You got New Seasons. You're just really close to a lot of things. They have antiques. They're kind of known also for their antiques off Milwaukee Avenue. They've got one of my favorite sushi restaurants just off Bybee. You have to wait in line for quite a while just to get in, but it's well worth it. It's called, well, let me get to it. I'm spacing the name of it, but it is a very popular sushi restaurant that I always tell people, if you're going to start sushi, you haven't tried it before, you need to, you've got to start at this place. And of course, Suburbs, that's it. It's right here. Pull the screen down a little bit. Suburbs, love this place. Fresh sushi, little hole in the wall, but literally you'll see people waiting out there long before 5 o'clock before they open. And there's a reason for that. It's well worth it. Anyway, tons of different places to go in there and just enjoy. If you take Bybee across, you're going to hit a place called Eastmoreland. And Eastmoreland is not a very big area, but the housing in there is absolutely exquisite. It is tree-lined streets, wide streets, a lot of homes in there, well over 1 million. It feels like you're going back in time again, and you're just kind of taken aback by the beauty of the houses. It's different than Sherwood. Sherwood has the cute little bungalows. There's not a lot of space between houses, and Eastmoreland is more of that estate type feel. And of course, prices reflect that as well. Eastmoreland is not necessarily walkable. I mean, you could walk across the bridge over Bybee and take advantage of the services that Sherwood has, but you're really moving to Eastmoreland for a completely different feel. And there's some people that go over there and they're like, nope, that's not my style. I prefer the small bungalows. Whereas some people don't want the small bungalows and they want that more stately feel of the Eastmoreland homes, but just really a beautiful neighborhood to drive through. All right, so we're almost out of Multnomah County as we're going here towards the south part of Eastside, and we're heading over to Milwaukee. So the next city over from Southeast Portland, Sherwood Moreland area is the Milwaukee area, and Milwaukee is Clackamas County. So we're now out of Multnomah County. So Milwaukee is one of those cities where if you don't want Multnomah County taxes or Multnomah County at all, Milwaukee is a great alternative because you can get into Portland pretty quickly from there, from the 224 freeway. Milwaukee's pretty spread out as well. There's a lot of options for housing. You've got older homes, newer home areas. There you've got houses along the river. It's a pretty large city on the east side and offers a lot of alternative for housing styles and prices. I mean, you can still get affordable houses in Milwaukee, and then you can pay a lot more depending on where you want and what kind of amenities you want. In Milwaukee, we've got Oak Grove. That usually commands a little bit of a higher price point because you're close to River Road. River Road is obviously going to be houses that are close to the river or on the river. And it definitely has a charm to that location, but a lot of older homes, not a ton of newer homes unless a builder, renovated something along there. And then of course, east of Highway 99 in Milwaukee, you've got Oatfield area, Jennings Lodge area, and just, again, a cadre of different types of houses and housing styles. Now, as we get south along Highway 99, moving out of Milwaukee, there's this little town called Gladstone. And if you blink, you might miss it. It's not very big, but if you can kind of peek into here, the charm of Gladstone is that it's kind of in this quadrant. It feels like you're kind of down in the main part of off Highway 99. There's actually a lot of car dealerships off Highway 99. Gladstone kind of butts up against the Clackamas River, and it's just old, charming mixture of homes, everything from bungalows to ranches. You got some 1960s and 70s mixed in there, super eclectic, but again, affordable. You can still get a cute home in the Gladstone area for what we consider to be affordable here in Portland. All right, now let's take a little bit of a moment here to like step away, step up. I want to talk about Clackamas for a minute. So we're going more east of what the areas we've been talking about, because it's worth talking about the Sunnyside, Happy Valley area, which is further out. So I'm going to pull the map out here a little bit so you can kind of see it. All right. So 205 goes north and south. It goes up towards Vancouver and down south. And everything east of the 205, we've kind of highlighted today as far as like neighborhoods or, popular areas. If you go east of 205, you're going to run into Happy Valley and Sunnyside. And those have a ton of new construction going on. A lot of the developments in the Happy Valley, Sunnyside area. If you drive out there, you're going to actually see, if you go up Sunnyside Road, several miles, you're going to see tons of either newer or in the last 15 years of construction. So this is where on the east side, the construction is actually happening. If you're looking for newer, then Happy Valley is going to be where you find it. It's really kind of evolved a lot. When I was growing up, Happy Valley was nothing but farmland. There was very little development happening. And then in the early 2000s, they took off running with building construction. They actually started building like higher end homes. There's actually views because Happy Valley kind of runs up a hill. There's lots of hills where you can build and have a view on. And in the early 2000s, they did a ton of new construction. During the recession of 2008 through 2012, when I was in real estate, we called it Death Valley because there was so much new construction that happened. And then, the economy fell off a cliff. We all know what happened in 2008 through 2012. And it just kind of dead stopped. And there was all that you could get a smoking deal back then. But we called it Death Valley because nobody wanted to live that far out at the time. Well, it's come full back. I mean, it fully come back. People love buying out there. You can get a great house for the money. You can get $1 million views. You can get $1 million homes and everything in between. But there's a lot of construction happening out there. So if you're on the east side and you want newer, that's where you go. All right. Now we're going to go further south to Oregon City. So Oregon City is at the very bottom of what I consider the Portland metro area. It's kind of got this small town feel in a way because Oregon City, it's just over the river from West Linn. It butts up against kind of the Milwaukee Gladstone area, but it kind of goes up a hill and over, and you really feel like you're kind of in your own little town. And you can get acreage properties out there. You can get beautiful acreage properties out there. For the money, you get a lot more if you're looking for acreage. It still butts up against farmlands, but there's also a lot of neat communities and neighborhoods in Oregon City. They did a lot of new construction in the early 2000s up there and created some nice communities up there, but it's also older too. So if you get to downtown Oregon City, let's take a look down here. There is an older area of Oregon City that kind of reminds me a little bit of Sherwood, like Sherwood before it took off running. And there's just older bungalows, older homes down there off, the main streets of the downtown. They have really neat restaurants and furniture stores and pizza place. And it also is where the Oregon City municipal area is as well. But just, it's kind of got a cool downtown area. I feel like Oregon City has a long ways to go for I think someday it's going to be the place. That's my sense because people really love kind of that older Main Street feel, those houses around there. And there's been a lot of revitalization in that area. So while it's come a long, long way and it's really got some cool restaurants in that area, I think it has a lot of potential. And my first house I ever bought when I was 23, I bought in Oregon City because it was affordable. It's still affordable, but again, a lot of people like Oregon City for various reasons. So it has all different price points, to be honest. And like I had mentioned, it sits out up against the urban growth boundary. So if somebody's wanting acreage properties, whether it's hobby farm or they want, a beautiful large home on small or large acreage, it's got all of that. It also has Clackamas Community College in there. If you're a golfer, they've got the Oregon Golf Club. And of course, if you go further out, which we're not going to go too much further out in discussion because that kind of takes us out more towards the greater Clackamas County type area, but Beaver Creek is also kind of adjoined with Oregon City. But Beaver Creek is much more about acreage properties, not a ton of subdivisions out in Beaver Creek. That's where you're kind of living in the country once you start going out towards Beaver Creek and beyond. So that gives you kind of a highlighted overview of the east side, from the north part of the east side all the way down, just trying to give an kind of an overlay of little areas, communities, and what kind of the vibe might look or feel like. So if you have any questions about the east side specifically, reach out. Love to help and answer any questions you can.